Hey, this is Lex, and welcome to another episode of Lipstick and Liberation, a podcast from the perspective of a now 41-year-old feminist Black woman who is navigating life and all of the social things that are going on and topics in the world, and trying to give you a perspective that you have not considered from a woman's point of view based on liberation politics. I want to thank you guys so much for coming back. This episode may be a little longer because I have a lot to discuss. I have been reading books and just been diving into different discussions about women's rights lately. And it's really given me a lot more stuff to talk about this podcast. I think I have a very good, just general topic that's going to branch off into other things that I've spoken about. So, as I say every week, so with my lipstick, as with misogyny, I always get the shade right. Please feel free to follow my Facebook page or reach out to me, leave a comment or a review on wherever you have podcasts that you listen to this at. I would love to have your feedback. You can also write into me. There is an option to send me messages that is attached to the podcast. So again, just thank you guys so much for coming back. I know times have not been the easiest, especially under this administration. Prices have been high. People have been struggling to make ends meet. It's been very hard, especially for single parent households. So I'm sending you a lot of love and hope as we're all trying to navigate through this. And so this past week, it seems like the main discussion that we have been having is about men and fatherhood. And I dove into some topics that were tied to that. Like I read Tina Knowles' book, Matriarch, finally, and it was amazing, guys. And I'm going to tie all of that in. But I want to start out with talking about the discussion that we had about men and their role as fathers. And what I noticed is that the whole statement that men are necessary in the household for the success of children is really propaganda that is designed to have women stay in bad relationships with men for the sake of the children. Men don't even really buy into this as a responsibility of something that they need to do. You can see that in the way that they do not hold each other accountable when they are out here destroying their marriages and their relationships or risking them. You know, when they're cheating on their partner or being abusive to their partner, they're not telling the men that you're going to break up your household. You're going to lower the chance that your child has of having good outcomes based on your behavior. The critique for that is always for the women who want to leave the bad relationships. It's never for the men who are creating the bad relationship situations that make women want to leave. Because women are socialized to put up with a lot from men. And so with that added in bonus that you're hurting the kids by putting out the father who is refusing to do better, even though you've asked over and over and over again, it works to men's advantage to promote themselves as indispensable while not doing anything to demonstrate that value. Because what do we expect for men to do to demonstrate that value? A lot of times people just say if a father is present and if he's providing, and the providing thing is actually kind of secondary, even the presence itself is considered like some kind of gift. And it's designed to make it seem like women have to be worthy to receive this. You have to be the perfect partner in order to receive this man who is going to be there and do what he's supposed to do for these children. It's not contingent on the man needing to be a good father. It's contingent on the woman pleasing the man enough that he decides to be a good partner. And then if he doesn't want to be a good partner, the woman's still supposed to put up with it because think of the children. She has to think of the children. He doesn't have to think of the children or anything else. And we see that too with how there are some women who are married single mothers. Even though people say that the father's presence is so important, they often don't know basic things about the children. They often are not doing a lot of the child rearing. You know, there's times where even women are saying they can't leave their house to go and do things because the father will not monitor the children while they're gone. But they're there. And the fact that they are there is supposed to mean that the outcomes are going to be better automatically. And this is not even true. When people talk about these statistics, it's so fascinating to me, especially when we're having these discussions with Black men specifically, because we see how oppression trickles down. When white men try to imply that Black men are more violent than them by using crime statistics and completely ignoring the fact that Black people are over-policed And oftentimes we are falsely convicted as well because of racism and over policing. And the fact that we also know that white men are also violent and oftentimes under prosecuted, we can't really say based on the prosecution data that definitively black men are more violent than white men. But those numbers with that skew support that mindset for white men when they want to like promote this racist idea that black men are more deviant than them somehow. So then you will see black men turn around and use statistics like with single fatherhood. Oh, single father households have better outcomes, where they're not looking at the fact that single father households are much rarer. 80% of single parent households are single mother households. 20% are single father households. Single father households typically, because of patriarchy, have more money in them. And money is really the deciding factor in outcomes more than the gender of the parent raising the children. And that is the thing that men do not want people to discuss. Men want to make fatherhood this mythological thing that heals households and makes everything okay in every household, while also not being good partners, while also not taking responsibility for the children. Just the presence of a father. It's like some kind of artifact that's just radiating greatness into the household just by being there. It doesn't have to do anything. Just the father being there is going to change the way the household runs, no matter how he acts, no matter what he's doing. It's always going to be better than if he wasn't there. That is how they want us to look at it. But when you look at stats about like same-sex couples, lesbian couples, they are showing that they have similar outcomes as two-parent households that are heterosexual. So there isn't a need for a man specifically to make the outcome in the households better. There's actually just a need for two parents that have funds and money and resources to take care of the kids and make sure that the kids have good lives. That is what's making good outcomes. It's not that one of the parents have a penis, but that's what men want women to think because that works to their advantage. If women think that having a man around is the key to the success of their children, then they will put up with more because they love their children. They're going to put up with more from a man in order to have a man around for the success of their children. So that's why I say it's propaganda. It's not actually based on the fact that a man needs to be there to make things better. It's based on the fact that men want women to think that because that makes everything easier for them. It makes everything that they're trying to do easier for them. And you, like I said, you don't see them holding men accountable when they are ruining their homes. That's why you know that they don't really believe in this, like the importance of the father actually being there. When we think about like even Nick Cannon, when he was making all those broken homes and people were saying that he should not be doing that, so many men came on and said, well, he has the money to do that. He can do that because he has so much money. There's so many men out there who have multiple babies' mamas, and people do not think that they should stop or marry one or just stop having children altogether, get a vasectomy because they need to focus on the ones that they have. You don't hear people policing men and how they create these homes in the way that they police women for failing to keep a man in the home. Being a father who is absent or deadbeat, it's never addressed as it's the man's fault. It's a woman should have chosen better. It reminds me of how when white people will say that like, you just happen to run into a racist white person, that most white people are not racist, which is not true. That's like baseline in whiteness is the racism. They have to work to not be racist. This is the same thing with men. It is not baseline in manhood that men are honest and good and kind and straightforward with women about their intentions with them. And they know that. They know that. Finding a good man and having a good man and being confident that you're not being tricked by a man into thinking that he's a good man when he's not. That is not something easy for women. It's not. It's true that some women do make bad choices, like choosing to be a man's third baby mama. It's absolutely crazy. But there are plenty of people out there that are getting with men and for the first time, they don't know how they are as fathers and they are portraying themselves a certain way. It is known, especially in domestic violence circles and circles where people are talking about different kinds of abuse, that abusers will put on a great show until they have a person in a situation where they feel like they are trapped, and then they will show them their true selves. And this does happen very commonly. And men know that other men do this. They tell each other. I've seen tweet threads where they tell each other, oh, don't tell a woman that you voted for Donald Trump because then you won't get a date with her. You have to just date her and then slowly bring her around to your way of thinking. Like that is something that men actually tell each other as a normal way to court women. So they know that men are out here tricking women, pretending to be one thing, and then showing up as something else when they finally think you're in love with them. They know this is happening. They know that. And they also blame women for being cheated on and mistreated. They say it's their fault because, again, that puts the onus on women to stay and try to be better so their significant other won't do that to them. Like we all remember when Jay-Z cheated on Beyonce. I didn't hear men saying, oh, well, you're breaking up your home. Your children are going to have a less chance of being as successful if you had treated their mom better. No, we heard men saying, well, I let that be a lesson to you ladies. If Beyonce can get cheated on, it's over for you guys. The rest of you guys can get it too. That's literally what they said. They took that as an example that if somebody who is as beautiful and talented and just desirable and just seen as like the ultimate woman like Beyonce could get cheated on, then the rest of us should just accept the fact that we should get cheated on too. And these are the people that are telling us that fathers are so necessary in the household, yet they're never saying anything to the men who are messing up their marriages and mistreating their partners, which is going to eventually lead to them not being in the household. So like I said, it's propaganda. They don't believe it as something to make men want to step up and do more and be more in the household. They want women to feel that way so that women will put up with more from men rather than put them out because somebody please think of the children. And they don't expect the men to think of the children. They want the women to think of the children. Because if they did, they would be harder on men that were deadbeats. They would not have been picking on Russell Wilson for stepping up and stepping into Future's life, the baby Future, when his father Future was not doing his job. They would have been more critical of Future for being a deadbeat dad rather than picking on Russell Wilson for marrying Sierra and taking that child in and treating him as his own. That's the thing with men, is that everything for them is about maintaining power and control over women. And they think that these are normalized viewpoints that people are wrong to question. And that's a part of what the beauty of feminism is us daring to question, where did this come from? Why is this being said? Why are we being told this? And again, that is because the onus of keeping the family together is placed on the woman, not on the man and his behaviors. And we don't have to put up with that. We don't have to stand for that. And it's also not a fact. Like I said, when we look at other studies, even when the household has two men in it, when they're two homosexual men who are adopting children, as long as there's two parents in that household and they are invested in the kid and the household has the money and the resources, then the household is fine. I actually think that as women, we need to reevaluate why we are having kids with people we are in romantic relationships with specifically. Why do we think that that's the next logical step just because that's always been done? Like romantic relationships are so conditional. They're like, even when people get married, people always say marriages went through a rough patch. We went through a tough time. And usually the tough time is a man cheating, and we all know that. But we know that romantic relationships are frail, that you have to put a lot aside to keep them together. And sometimes people are not happy in them. So why do we think that romantic relationships have to be the catalyst to us getting into parenthood? I often wonder that. I often wonder why, even because when I see rich women, like when I saw like Lotto just came out and announced that she was pregnant, and we all know it's by 21 Savage, even though he can't seem to be in the announcement or whatever. And that's allegedly because people are saying he is married, but allegedly he's married for citizenship. It's just a mess. But it makes me wonder because she's so wealthy. Like if she really wanted to be a mom, why do women sign up for these bad deals with men, these messy situations to become mothers? And I get why poor women do it because, again, we're talking about, just like I said earlier, with having two people in the household, that's more assets and more resources. That's why people want to make those things work. It's harder to do it by yourself. It absolutely is. You can. Sometimes it's better to do it by yourself if the other person is toxic. I 100% will tell somebody to put their child's father out, put their husband out if he is ruining the household, if he is bringing negativeness and nastiness. If you guys dread him coming home, get rid of him. It's perfectly fine to get rid of him. But is it better to have a household where both people are in it and they're loving and they're contributing? Of course, that's better for the child. Of course. You can have two people who love children and are giving those children something and pouring into them. Of course, that's better than one person. But if you have one person that's toxic and the other person is constantly dealing with their toxicity and trying to make sure that they're healthy and present for the kids, that other person has to go. And there's nothing wrong with them being put out. They deserve to go. They don't care about the well-being of the children. They don't care about the household staying together. They don't care about everyone turning out well, because if they did, they wouldn't be bringing like all that anger and nastiness and toxicity and the cheating into the household. So it's okay to get rid of them. But I often wonder why rich women even bother with having a baby daddy at all. I often wonder why they don't just go to the sperm bank and have children if they want to be mothers. Because I also think that women do not think about, we're not socialized to think about how much power we are giving over in our lives when we choose to have children with men. Because a lot of times when men don't want to act right when it comes to the children, they take the abandonment route and they leave the mother with the work. That's how they exercise their control, by knowing that they changed a woman's life and they can leave her with this child to care for while they go and do what they want to do. But there are other men out there who like to exercise that control by using like the court system to abuse women, or, making up things about women as far as like, oh, she won't let me see my kid, even though he doesn't want to see the kid. We do know there are men who will use having a child with you to keep accessing your life to make your life hell. Like that does happen. That happens very frequently to women. And it makes me wonder why rich women wouldn't even want to bypass all of that. Why would you want to like have a baby with somebody and you're rich and have to deal with that when you don't have to? Because the money, it's like I said at the beginning, the money and the security and the resources are what really give those kids the outcome that are good, whether you have it independently or whether you have a household where two people are contributing. And that is what's causing them to have the resources. It's the resources. That's why single fathers look like they are performing better on paper, because single mothers are in more poverty than single fathers. That's literally it. That is the difference. It is money. So when you're dealing with rich women who are already independently with money, they can hire nannies, they can hire services, they can send their child to the best private schools. I have to wonder why they even want a man involved at all. I have to. Because it really doesn't make sense from a logical standpoint. From a romantic standpoint, which is how women are socialized to approach life, of course it does. Of course you want to meet a person and fall in love with that person, and you guys have a great life together. And then through that love, you guys create a child. But how many times does that happen? And it goes very, very wrong. How many relationships do people have where they were very much in love and then it falls apart? Wouldn't it be more ideal if we had kids that their like safety and where they lived and how their life was going to be was not conditional on the fact that two people stay in love with each other? Logically, wouldn't that be the better outcome? I think so. I think we've been socialized to think of family units in one specific way. And even though family units have failed, the more freedom that women have gotten, the more that women have been able to escape the bad treatment of men, the less we have had families that are staying together in the traditional way. And people's solution to that is trying to make women like have to have children or not be able to work, or say that feminism is bad. It's not that men are not creating like households and lifestyles that women want to be a part of and stay in. It's that women have too much freedom to leave. That's the problem. Because people cannot think of creating families outside of the box. And I really wish that we would. Sometimes I even think the best families would be a couple of girlfriends buying a house and moving in and raising their kids together if they're not married. One of the best times I had in parenting is when my sister came to stay with me and she helped me raise my son. She was here for 2 years. We co-parented together so well, and I had 50-50 custody. So my ex-husband, of course, would come and get his son. But when he was here, it was me and my sister. It was like he had two moms. There was no arguments, there was no unpleasantness in the house. We all got along great. We hung out, we watched movies. My son's language developed so well. We worked diligently researching positive parenting. My sister potty trained him. He never had accidents or wet the bed overnight or anything like that. Like, it was a great parenting experience with her. It absolutely was. I wasn't coming home walking on eggshells, worried about this, that. We were a team. And I think about that sometimes. I'm like, man, what if women were parenting like that, just period? What kind of society would we create? I do. I just think that the way we think about what family should be is so rigid, and that men want it to be something that centers them as these mythological creatures who make everything better by being present. But their presence is only going to be there if you pick the right man, and then if you behave in a very specific way so that he doesn't cheat or do X, Y, and Z. Like, that's the alternative. And we won't think outside the box about what family could be if we didn't tie it to romantic relationships with men. Because there are people out there who are successfully raising children without men. So men really can't argue that they are necessary. You know, nobody that's a bad parent is necessary. A bad mother isn't necessary either. That's just reality. But nobody says that a mother has to be there. We just expect that no matter what, the mother is going to be there. But with the men, they have to be there for the household to be successful. If it's just a mother, it can't be successful because it needs that mythological father. Or so the women need to believe. So I would challenge women to think about that. Like, let that be something you think about this week if you want to reach out and talk. Why do we feel like romantic relationships are the stepping stone into parenthood? Why don't we look at parenthood as something that we could just embark on if we had the means and the resources? We could just have children we could have them without a legal father. That way we wouldn't have to worry about him popping up, wanting to take us to court if we're separated or divorced, you know, arguing about if we can get a passport to take our kids somewhere because somebody wants to exercise control. You can't vaccinate them because the father's decided to be an anti-vaxxer. Like, things could be so much less complex. And I don't think that we consider that. So many women don't even think they can embark on motherhood if they haven't fallen in love and checked that box. This is what I need. I have to have a husband and a house. We're buying houses. We're maintaining bank accounts. We have loans and credit cards now, which we couldn't have in the past. We have a lot more freedom. Why are we not thinking more outside of the box about what motherhood could be? If we didn't think that it had to be tied to men, especially when men insist on believing that they are so integral to households that they don't have to behave correctly in order to maintain a relationship, because they expect you to take on the brunt of their behavior because they believe that you will have worse outcomes for your kids if they're not there. So you just got to deal with what they're doing. Just some food for thought. And pivoting from that, I want to talk about Matriarch by Tina Knowles. Wow, what a great book. I'm so sad that it took me so long to read it. I really fell in love with her and her story. And what I really noticed about it, it was so pro-Black, so reflective. She had so much understanding about herself and her family dynamics, you know, after all this time that she had to look back. But what I noticed the most about the book is that the stories were so much richer before she became a mom. They were about her before she became a mom. I learned so much about her. I was so enraptured in her story from when she was growing up, the things her mom went through, how her mom was with, you know, she had this husband, the first husband, and he was so mean and nasty to her. And she went back home and she married who eventually ended up being Tina's dad. And they fell on hard times and they had to go and live with the mean husband, and just how her growing up, how her mom was received, the way that she played the neighborhood kids, the way she saw herself, badass teeny B, and her relationships and friendships, that she wanted to be a singer. There was so much in the beginning of the book before she got married and had Beyonce and Solange that just gave you such a full idea of like the dreams and the hopes that women have, and then how they basically trade that in a lot of cases, especially in her generation, to take care of and be there for their children, while their husbands don't do that same thing. Because what really fascinated me and made me sad, I mean, it frustrated me a lot, was seeing how many times that she went back to Matthew Knowles. There were so many times that I read about things that he was doing to her, and he was constantly cheating on her. And she just wanted her family. She wanted to find the good in him and stay with him. She tried to leave him a couple times, and every time she tried to leave, he would go out of his way to get her back and then start cheating again. He would go to therapy, say, "Oh, I've changed. I've gone to therapy," and it would be good again. Then he would start back up with the cheating. And I felt for her. I really did, because she poured so much into her children. You know, he had that interview recently where he was like basically saying like, "Oh, well, what did Tina do?" And when you read this book, she's the reason that Beyonce and Solange got into music. She signed them up for those programs. She nurtured that in them. Matthew came along when he saw that they had talent. When the girls groups, like all the girls, when they would get together and stuff and practice, that was going on in Tina's salon. That was Tina and the group of moms getting them together. Matthew did not orchestrate that. He showed up when it was already together. In fact, I believe in the book, Tina said basically like when he got overruled about what they were going to perform on Star Search and they lost, that's kind of when he like took control of everything. But for him to say, what did she do when she birthed Beyonce and Solange and she nurtured their interest in music? And the whole time he's running up bills, cheating on her, like we talk about again about present fathers, she's being forced to leave the house because of his behaviors and his mistreatment of her. And he's not stopping. No matter how many times she gave him chances, he would not stop cheating. Even to the point where, you know, he had that paternity suit. She found out about that through the media. Like, she put up with and dealt with so much, and she genuinely tried to love that man. And I felt for her. I felt for her because I felt like her identity got sucked up into that cycle of his constant cheating, constantly running up bills. Like, there was a point where he quit to manage Beyonce and she was the sole income, and he was still running up bills and buying stuff behind her back. Like, the insanity. I really wanted to fight her dad. I honestly did. I truly wanted to fight him. There were so many times she would break up with him. I'd be like, finally, Tina. Then the next page, well, Matthew said he went to therapy, and so we're going to give it another try. And I just felt for her because I know she just wanted everything to work out. And he was never going to do what was necessary for that because he was getting away with it. He did not care that he was embarrassing her, that he was embarrassing Beyonce by being out here with these side babies. He literally didn't care. And the onus was on Tina in her mind to try to keep them together. She would try to leave, but she would feel that pressure and go back. And I felt for her because, like I said, the beginning of the book, before she gets married, before she has her kids, she was a woman who was so full of life, so full of gusto. I mean, sassing off at police officers during like the Jim Crow era. Like, she was a force to be reckoned with. And watching her get whittled away by that relationship. And when she talked about when she finally left, how she had to go to therapy and spend a weekend crying and releasing all that anger with her therapist. I really felt for her. But it was a beautiful book. It was beautiful to hear her read it. And she was very raw and honest. And I loved hearing her story. I really did. I just enjoyed everything that she shared. And the older I get, the more I appreciate the honesty and the vulnerability of women, because she could have been embarrassed about how many times she went back. And that's why I always leave space for women to tell those true stories. Because at the end of the day, it's like I said, women are socialized to put up with BS from men. Women are told that men are necessary for a successful household. They want that two-parent household for their children, even when the man doesn't really want it for their children. He just wants her to feel like she needs it. And that was Tina. And she made choices based on that. And I can't hate on her about that. Even though I wanted her to be done with Matthew, every chapter that she said that I really wanted that for her, I understand why that was hard for her, especially the generation she was in. I have so much respect for the women before us, even though they made choices that obviously I would not make. Like, my marriage only lasted 3 years, and it honestly was too long. I should have like ended it before that. I'm very grateful for the son that I have from it, but yeah, I was never going to stick around and be unhappy. That's not in my DNA. And I fully believe that I can give my son a great life without a man in the house. He's still, like I said, Mike's husband is 50-50 custody. He still goes to get him, or comes to get him, excuse me. But I knew that my son needed a place where he didn't have to worry about somebody coming home and ruining the mood or walking on eggshells. He needed that place more than we needed a man in the house. And the fact that women before me weren't even allowed to feel like that truly, not without ridicule and constant reinforcement that they needed a man in the house, I have grace for that. The things that they went through, and like I said, Tina's honesty really gave me focus on how far we've come as women. Because even when people talk about single mother households, even the fact that now women can get credit cards and loans and we're buying houses and stuff now, that is improving what single motherhood is like. Because like I said in the beginning, it's really about money, access, and resources. And when women could not get those things without men, it was much easier to truly say that men were necessary in the house, because you couldn't get those things if a man wasn't there to sign for them. But now that we can get those things, they're not as necessary as they want us to believe, so that they can keep on doing the things that they've been doing and still be left to stick around. Because women want more. We want better. We want to actually be treated well. We want to actually have somebody be faithful to us. We want to actually have somebody not yell at us, not raise their voice at us, not be stingy with us, not raise their hands at us. We have that ability to demand those things because we have access to more. And we owe that to our foremothers. So if you get a chance to read Tina Knowles' book, I really hope that you do. It was an amazing read, very interesting. I was really surprised that I was more interested in her life before she became Beyonce's mom. I thought I would be like more into the Beyonce chapters, but I really just love seeing Tina as the person she was before she became a mother. It also reminded me so much of how much women sacrificed back then to become mothers. And it gave me a gratitude, even though I don't love being a 50-50 parent. Ideally, I would have loved for my marriage to work out. My parents were married until my father died, and I loved my father. As much as I get on here and I talk about the realities of what patriarchy is, and like I said, that men needing to be in the household is propaganda to get women to stay with them, I was happy to be in the two-parent household I was in. But my father was kind to me. I know that his other children from his previous marriage, they may not have had the same experience, but I had a good experience with him. I saw him treat my mom well for the most part. I don't know, I know a lot of men have secrets. That's one of the things he even told me. So I can't say, obviously, what my mom's experience with him was. I can only say what I saw. And I had a good childhood overall. And I love my dad. My dad is honestly part of the reason that I am a feminist anyway. He always made me feel like I was equal to men and I shouldn't let men mistreat me. In fact, I didn't like my name. And I told my dad that one day. I said, I hate this name. I wish you hadn't named me this. And he told me, he said, I named you after a character on a soap opera in the 80s called Dynasty. And I chose that name for you because that woman, she didn't take anything from men. She was a villain in the show. Her ex-husband exiled her from town and she came back to tighten him up. And I said, if I have a daughter, I want her to be like that. My dad wanted me to be a different kind of woman. He wanted that for me. And so, like I said, I value him greatly. But my dad was also very honest with me about men. My dad told me up front that he feels that women love their children more than men do. And not in a way that he didn't love us. But he said, like, the way that men are socialized, it is not to look at children in the same way that women are. And so the way that we treat them sometimes comes out differently. And he said it could change. If the way men are socialized changes, if men's roles change, if the way that men expect things from each other changes, it can change. But that's not how it is now. And he's helped me with his understanding of men. I honestly think if he had told me about what emotional and psychological abuse were, I would have been able to avoid that too. The things he told me about, I avoided. So, like I said, I have all the respect and love for my father. But I also know for a fact, because he also told me that too, that this stuff is propaganda to get women to stay in bad relationships. And he told me to never stay in a bad relationship. And I didn't. And I have him to credit for that too. My mom's Moxie, of course. But yeah, I do thank him for that. I don't think that people should not have their father in their life if he's a good father. That's not what I'm saying. And I want to be very clear about that. My concern is people mythologizing the role of a father in that children cannot be successful without him being there, so that women feel guilty if they don't stay with the man. That's problematic and it's not true. And if you have resources and you have a support system, you can still raise successful men if the father is not doing what he needs to do to show you respect and keep the home safe and happy for children. It's not on women to stick around and put up with poor treatment from men. And I want to be clear about that. Men don't even hold themselves to that standard about keeping the household together for children. And so women shouldn't have to hold themselves to that either. And that's pretty much my story this week. There was just so much. And I was, like I said, I was so grateful to experience Tina Knowles' book. I also saw Cardi B in concert last weekend. And let me tell you guys, it was so freeing and it was so wonderful to go. Like I said, these times are hard. Even as a single mom myself, maintaining my own home, et cetera, sometimes it gets exhausting. I'm out of school right now. I'll be doing another class in April. And even that feels like extra free time. I've been doing organizing around my house and stuff. But I haven't felt like I got to have fun. And when I went to that concert, I had so much fun. I truly enjoyed her. I am so glad that she's out of that relationship. I hope she'll take some time to heal. Her music was so healing for me. Her performance, her energy. I had the absolute best time. And if you have not gotten to see Cardi and she's coming to your town, I encourage you to get tickets. There is something even amazing about seeing all those beautiful women in the audience, feeling free, feeling safe to shake their behinds, wear their skimpy outfits. It was mostly women there. And in those spaces, watching women be themselves, unleash their inner bad bitch, and not be afraid that somebody's going to try to hit on them or harm them because they think it's an invitation for that. Indescribable. I feel so grateful that I got to experience that. I feel so grateful to be a woman. I feel so grateful that you guys tuned in and listened to me this week. And I want you to go away with that. I want you to go away thinking about what I said about Why are we having families in this traditional sense when we know all the pitfalls to it? Why are we sticking to tradition when tradition has not served us well? It's something to think about. Even as we watch conservative women try to tell us where we need to be while they're on TV at work, that we don't need to be at work, that we need to be back home, that we need to be taking care of children, even though the reason that women aren't doing that anymore is because men did not hold up their end of the deal and they were harmful. Why are we obsessed with tradition? Why are we not looking for ways to carve new paths for better outcomes for ourselves? I want you to think about that, and I will talk to you guys next week.